Chidi, please open your eyes. Ifeoma screamed, dropping to her knees in absolute terror. She shook his cold body, but he did not move. Ngozi began to wail loudly, pulling her own hair in deep regret. My brother, what have we done to you? Please do not die. For the first time in years, the two bitter enemies held each other, crying and shouting for the neighbors to help them lift Chidi's heavy, lifeless body into the back of a car. The evening sun set over Enugu City, casting long shadows across Chidi's beautiful living room. Chidi walked inside carrying a large, glossy boutique bag. He smiled, handing the heavy bag to his wife, Ifeoma. Inside was a costly, shining lace fabric for her upcoming birthday. Ifeoma gasped, hugging him tightly around his neck. Suddenly, the kitchen door swung open with a loud bang. Chidi's sister, Ngozi, stood there, her eyes wide with instant anger. She stared at the expensive gift, her face twisting in deep pain as her hands began to shake with heavy jealousy. So, this is how you treat me now, Ngozi screamed, her voice piercing the quiet house. Tears streamed down her face instantly. You buy gold and lace for this woman, but last week I begged you for small money to fix my shop laptop and you told me to wait. Ifeoma dropped the bag on the chair, stepping forward boldly. He is my husband, Ngozi. He owes me everything first. Go and find your own man to buy you lace. Chidi held his head in his hands, feeling a sharp headache start to pound behind his eyes. The next morning, the family WhatsApp group chat exploded with angry messages. Ngozi had sent a long voice note to their elderly aunts and uncles in the village. She wept loudly in the recording, claiming Chidi had abandoned his own blood because of a strange woman. By noon, Chidi's phone rang repeatedly. His uncle's heavy voice boomed through the speaker, warning him never to neglect his only sister for a wife. Chidi sat at his office desk, staring at the screen, feeling the heavy weight of family guilt pressing down hard on his chest. To bring peace, Chidi took Ngozi to an expensive phone shop the following Saturday. He bought her the latest smartphone, spending money he had saved for house repairs. Ngozi laughed happily, instantly posting it on her status. But back home, the atmosphere turned into ice. Ifeoma looked at the receipt on the table and went completely silent. She did not cook, she did not speak, and she moved her pillows to the visitor's room. The heavy, cold silence in the house became so thick that Chidi could barely breathe at night. 2 weeks later, Chidi planned a weekend vacation to a beautiful resort in Obudu to please his angry wife. He packed their bags, hoping the fresh air would heal their marriage. As they reached the car, Ngozi ran out of the boys' quarters, weeping hysterically. She clutched her stomach, rolling on the gravel ground, claiming she was having a sudden, terrible ulcer attack. Ifeoma hissed loudly, crossing her arms. It is a lie, Chidi. Do not look at her. If you stay back today, this marriage is completely over. Chidi stood between the car door and his weeping sister, completely paralyzed. His heart raced fast. He could not leave his only sister bleeding on the ground. But looking at Ifewa's cold eyes, he knew he was losing his wife. He dropped the suitcases back onto the dusty floor. Ifewa did not say a single word. She walked back into the house, locked the main door from the inside, and threw Chidi's clothes out through the window. The neighbors gathered at their balconies, whispering and watching the public shame. The next weekend, Chidi tried to balance the scales. He took Ngozi out for a special dinner to make her feel loved. They sat in a bright restaurant, but Chidi could not taste the food. His phone vibrated continuously on the table. Ifeoma was sending pictures of an empty house, stating she had packed half her things to her mother's place. Ngozi reached across the table, pulling Chidi's phone away angrily. Look at me when I am talking to you. Stop checking up on that wicked woman. Months passed, and the toxic competition grew worse every single day. If Chidi bought bread for Ifeoma, Ngozi demanded cake. If Chidi paid Ngozi's house rent, Ifeoma demanded a new gold ring to match her friends. Chidi started working double shifts at his job just to make more money to satisfy their endless, greedy demands. He stopped eating well, his eyes grew deeply sunken, and his skin became dull. He was running a race with no finish line, trapped between the two women he loved most. One rainy Tuesday, Chidi returned home completely soaked and exhausted from the heavy traffic. He stepped into the parlor, only to meet a terrible battle. Ifeoma and Ngozi were standing chest to chest, screaming filthy insults at each other. Pots from the kitchen were shattered across the tiled floor and soup stained the white walls. Ngozi had torn Ifeoma's wedding picture from the wall, smashing the glass into tiny pieces. Ifeoma was holding a heavy wooden turning stick, ready to strike Ngozi's head. Stop it! Both of you, just stop! Chidi screamed with the last strength in his lungs. His voice cracked with deep agony. He rushed between them, grabbing the wooden stick from Ifeoma's hand while pushing Ngozi back. The two women did not even care about his pale face. They kept shouting over his shoulders, throwing heavy curses and blaming each other for the ruin of the house. Chidi felt a strange, sharp tightness in his chest. Air refused to enter his lungs, and his vision blurred. Suddenly, Chidi gasped loudly, clutching his left arm. A terrible pain shot through his body. He stumbled backward, hitting the television stand before crashing heavily onto the hard floor. His eyes rolled back into his head, and white foam began to form at the corner of his mouth. He lay completely still, his chest refusing to rise. The loud, chaotic room went deathly silent in a microsecond. The turning stick dropped from Ifeoma's hand, making a loud, hollow sound against the tiled floor. Chidi, please open your eyes, Ifeoma screamed, dropping to her knees in absolute terror. She shook his cold body, but he did not move. Ngozi began to wail loudly, pulling her own hair in deep regret. My brother, what have we done to you? Please do not die. For the first time in years, the two bitter enemies held each other, crying and shouting for the neighbors to help them lift Chidi's heavy, lifeless body into the back of a car. At the emergency ward of the hospital, the red light buzzed ominously. Doctors and nurses rushed inside, pushing Chidi on a metal stretcher while fixing oxygen tubes to his nose. Ifeoma and Ngozi sat on the cold metal bench outside, their clothes covered in Chidi's sweat and dirt. Neither of them spoke a word. The silence between them was no longer filled with anger, but with a deep, crushing guilt. They looked at their trembling hands, realizing their foolish pride had destroyed him. Hours later, the tired doctor walked out, removing his hand gloves. The two women jumped up instantly, holding their breath. He suffered a severe panic attack mixed with extreme physical exhaustion, the doctor said sternly. His blood pressure is dangerously high. If he experiences this kind of heavy stress again, his heart will fail completely. Who has been doing this to him? Ifeoma and Ngozi lowered their heads in deep shame, tears of pure regret dropping heavily onto the hospital floor. They were finally allowed inside the private room. Chidi lay on the white bed, looking small, weak, and pale beneath the heavy blankets. Ifeoma sat on the left side of the bed, gently holding his hand, while Ngozi sat on the right, weeping silently. Chidi slowly opened his eyes, looking at both of them with deep tiredness. Ifeoma looked across the bed at Ngozi and reached out, touching her shoulder gently. The long, foolish war was finally over, but the price had almost been death.